Good evening. Welcome to A Foreigner in the Philippines. Well, I got my glasses on, so obviously going to read. I got this letter, which was interesting because it is so different to what we usually get, and so I wanted to make a comment on it. I'm not really trying to give any advice, just make open a few lines of thought and touch on some of the principles for success and succeeding in what you want to do, and how to go about it, that we've dealt with in our other videos. So this is from John. Let me see, I won't tell you his last name, but I doubt that he would mind, because this is not any kind of a really personal problem. He says, my question is a little bit of an odd one, as I find myself in a different situation compared to many foreign men who marry and move to the Philippines. I'm 31 years old, my wife is 4 years older than me, and both of us would rather live in the Philippines than settle in my home country of the United States. She is currently in the Philippines and I'm back in the US. So it's a happy marriage, and they are united in the idea that they would like to come and live in America. Well, while I am a published novelist of six books, not sex books, sorry about that, John, I am also a high school dropout with zero formal education. In America, that makes finding a good job very difficult. My wife and I lived in her hometown, Barrio, for 2 months last year, and I loved it. I understand that. However, it seems like I have to save an incredible amount of money just to go home and live a simple life, which really frustrates me at times. In my experience, many of the Westerners who settle are older gentlemen with a decent amount of money already saved. Is there any practical advice you can give an average American who just wants to go back to the barrio and live with his wife? Well, I wonder if the amount of money that you need is actually as great as you think. Now, I'm going to recommend a book. As usual, I can't remember the title, but it was a fairly well-known book, and it was called The 4-Hour Workweek. A man who certainly had all of the formulas and the suggestions down for how you could make a living working just 4 hours a week. Now, one of the ways that he showed how it's possible for you to make a target just by realizing that it's not actually as difficult as you have perhaps decided. And he cites the example of, say, wanting a Ferrari. Alright, so young guy, we're talking about a 31-year-old man now, so he's in his prime. How would he, most guys would think of a Ferrari as being totally out of their league. Right, now, what's the difference between owning a Ferrari and, say, leasing one? Well, actually, as far as the driving experience goes, there's absolutely none, is there? So, how did this writer, how did he advise people that they could have what they want? Well, he said, forgive my math here, because I'm not good at thinking on my feet on math. In fact, I'm a little, if there is such a thing as being dyslexic in maths, there I am. But what he said was, and this was true at the time that he wrote this, right? He said, for instance, you can hire a Corvette for, I think at the time it was about $600 a month. So $600 a month. Now, what would that actually mean? And he made some quick calculations about how we spend our money. How would you rate the joy of driving, say, a Ferrari or a Corvette? I would rate that very highly, and that would be something that I would be willing to actually work on. Now, a long time ago, it's shrouded in antiquity, right, for me, because I'd just come out of the army and I was only in my 20s. And there was something that I really wanted to do. So I was working at a club in London, and boy, the amounts of money seem so silly that I'm going to change them and update them to more to what you might expect to pay now. But for instance, we had, I think, 3 breaks in a night. And one of the joys, it was a hot, sweaty nightclub, and one of the joys was to have a Coke. And you could go and you could have an ice cold Coke, and you just come off the stand, and it was very pleasant, and it made the evening go well. And I was close friends with the piano player in the band, and we used to walk the streets of London and look at the architecture. And this is in the early hours of the morning. We started work at 9:30, and we didn't finish until about, I think, 20 to 4 in the morning. So we were walking in the night, and we would have our breaks at various times, and we would go out. Apart from having a meal, which was provided, we would go out and we would walk. Now, one of the great tests of willpower for what I was saving for was that we used to like to have a drink, and that was soft drinks, but that was what we actually enjoyed, and they were not expensive. But here's the theory behind our 4-hour work week man. He says break down 600 a month into weekly increments, right? So in a week you would break down how much, what you were going to, let's make it easy math for my all fogged out brain. Let's say that it was the vehicle that you wanted. It was beyond your dreams, but have a look at it, go online, find out, and you might find that it was, say, 400. And let's say that an average car was only 200. All right, so what we're doing is we're stepping up by doubling the amount that we're going to spend on this fabulous car. Now, what's the increase per week? Well, the increase per week is £50. £50 if you're working 5 days a week is, what, £10. It's £10 a day. Now, what's a McDonald's worth? Now, if every day you go to McDonald's or Taco Bell or one of the other, let's say that you take 2 breaks during the day, you have a coffee at Starbucks on the way in, which will cost you a certain amount of money, and you have a meal in the break, and you go out. Instead of taking sandwiches, you go out and you like to enjoy a meal. Now, $10, you would quickly get rid of $10. So, you want your Ferrari or this fabulous car that you have already said you could never afford, and it turns out that just by not having your Starbucks in the morning and your McDonald's or your Taco Bell or your other fast food which you so enjoy at lunchtime, there's £10. £10 every day of a 5-day week, and you've got your £50. £50 times 4 gives you the 200 that you need to add on to what you have already been affording. And you get your Ferrari or whatever the dream car was that we've put up here in theory. Right, so in other words, for our friend here, John, what exactly does he have to do in order to be able to live here? Well, he says that he is a high school dropout, I understand this very well. I'm not even a high school drop-in. Okay, so I left school when I was 15. Now, one of the things that reveals itself very quickly when you have a dream is that necessity is the mother of increasing your wages. So, if you really set your mind on having that car, if you really set your mind on having a better place to live with an increase in rent, right? If you set your mind on those things, then the wherewithal will come about. When I used to live, I lived alone for quite a time. This is before I had my children with my first Filipino wife. And I lived alone, and I lived in a modest house, but it was very well done because I was good at doing remodeling. So I remodeled the house, and it was a really nice house, albeit that it was a semi-detached, or duplex as the Americans would call it. It was really nice, and it had central heating in a country that really needs central heating, but that is notoriously famous for places not having central heating. Now, other guys in the band that I was working in used to have their own priorities, and they would go out and we would go on the road, and they would have a budget for, say, drinking, and they'd go to the bar and they'd have a few drinks. A lot of them had a few too many drinks, but we won't go into that. That's another story. And at the end of the week, they probably, some of them admitted to me that they probably spent £50 a week on drink. Now, this was beyond me. I couldn't imagine spending £50 a week on something that at the end of it you have nothing but a headache. So I used to enjoy going home to a warm house. I had central heating, I had it on a timer, and when I went out to work in the evening or in the afternoon, I might go out to work, and we might be working, say, in Manchester, which is 200 miles away from London, or 210 miles, and I would know how long it would take, I would know what time we were finishing, and I would know roughly what time we'd be home. So I would have timed it so that, let's say that I got home at, say, 3 o'clock in the morning on a freezing cold winter's night. I would walk in, and a friend of mine used to make a joke, and he used to say, "You like your house 80 in the shade," and that was it. And that used to cost me, I think, £7 a week. It's a long time ago now, so it could have been £7 a month. What I'm trying to illustrate is that that was worth it to me. Now, these other guys were saying to me, how can you possibly afford the electricity bill for that, or the gas bill, whichever the central heating system was at the time? And they never accounted for the fact that their drinking was costing more by far than anything I was spending on having my house warm when I went home. So it's quite possible that our friend John, who is apparently an accomplished writer, he's published 7 books. Now, this is not an easy task. Maybe they are e-books like mine. I've published 3 collections of short stories, and they are on Amazon, and quite possibly that's how he's done it. My books are e-books, and you buy them and you put them on Kindle and you read them on a tablet. He may well be doing that. Now, here's the way that if you have what you think of at first as an extraordinary target, right? Now, first of all, and we're not going all New Age on this, because it actually can be demonstrated to be true. The first thing that you need is you need a dream. And what's the saying? Dream big, think big, or go home. You need a dream, and you need to balance that fine line between what is a big dream and what is just dreaming. Now, you make sure that you have worked out what you would need. So our friend, he stayed for 2 months in the barrio of his wife, and as he said, he loved it. Now that's 2 months, 8 weeks. So going on a monthly roster, he had to meet bills for 4 weeks at a time. That's how we all think of it. So what would be his problem? His problem, as he sees it, is that he doesn't have enough money to do that, because he considers that us older gentlemen, thank you, have an income coming in. Now, believe me, when I came here, I did not have a huge income. I did have the total of 2 modest pensions, which I could live on modestly, okay? And I had about $2,000 in cash. Now, foolishly, I got through the cash fairly quickly, so I was down to living on what was coming in. So let's look at what the problem would be for John and how he could realize it. Well, what about him setting a goal to live here for 2 years? Now, maybe he would want insurance. Maybe he would want the insurance of not being stuck, and this is something that I thought of myself. He would not want the liability and the worry of being here and not being able to get home, and yet not being able to support himself. So let's say that he's going to come out here on a 2 or maybe 3 year basis. He's going to come out, and he's going to come out for 2 or 3 years. So let's look at okay. So we'll pull up, if I can, we'll pull up the calculator so that I don't get overstrained. Okay, now he's going to come out here for 3 years. Let's call it 3 years. He's going to give it a bash for 3 years, and he's going to give it a bash for 3 years based on the idea that he would work hard at becoming a more successful writer. That's something that's all open to him. Now, how could he become a successful writer? Well, there are many ways of earning money as a writer. You can write somebody's blog for them. So people want to put some information down and they want to run a blog, but they don't want to do the work. So you can get maybe $100 for writing a book, a blog. Or you can get 25, or you can get 30 or 40 or 50. That would be for you to establish yourself. You can start your own blog, and you can decide what abilities that you've got. Now, at one time, if you'd asked me what abilities I've got, I would have been saying, oh, well, not much. I've done a bit of this, and I've done a bit of that. But what I did before I came out from Fort Myers, I actually went to Toastmasters. And Toastmasters is a group of people who are interested in public speaking. Now, people get interested in public speaking for various reasons. Some just to overcome the fear of public speaking. That if they have to get up at, say, a business meeting and speak in front of a board meeting or something. Perhaps that's their thing. And they are so ragged at the idea of doing this that they decide that they're going to do something, and they go to Toastmasters. It doesn't cost very much at all. I think it was about $50 to join, and then you had dues which were not terribly expensive, and you learn to public speak. Now, if he's going to start a blog, it might be useful to be able to public speak. I certainly find what I learned with Toastmasters to be very useful, and I'm only too aware of my faults and how I would be torn to pieces if I went on and went as I so often do. If I did that in front of a Toastmasters, there we go, you see, I would be very, very strongly criticised. Terence, you've got to stop this business. It isn't so good, is it? No. So, knowing that you are going to come out to a place to live and you're going to have certain expenses, then you work out what those expenses mean. Now, Beth, a little while ago, did a video, and she said that she felt that could an expat live on $500 a month. $500 a month. Okay, $500 a month is divided by 4, and it's $125 a week. Now, let's do the times 52, and you get 6,500. So you've actually got to have 6,500, but we're coming for 3 years, so we're going to times that by 3, and you need 19,500. Now, one of the things, if you start looking at the way that people are viewing the attainment of goals, you'll find that there are a great number of different techniques for doing it. A great number. There are many, many motivational speakers on YouTube, all free. These are top people in their field, and they're going to be able to motivate you in a way that you will succeed. I think it was Dennis Waitley. He said, all you have to do in order to succeed at an important goal is you have a totally clear idea of what it is that you want to succeed at. In other words, you set a target, and then every day you do something toward that target. That's one way. The other way is the lateral thinking. Now, when you do lateral thinking, you say, well, I need, what was it, 19,500. Let's call it 20,000 to aid my aging mind. That is 20,000. So, how long would you like to take in order to succeed at that goal? Well, let's say that you have a given amount coming in at your job. So you divide what you would have to find in terms of savings every week, and you divide that 20,000 to arrive at a time where you would be able to leave for the Philippines and live happily for 3 years without earning anything in the barrio, living very simply and happily. So 20 grand, that's what we're just putting that out there. We're pulling that figure out of the air. So 20 grand. Now, how would you get that? Well, one way is to say, I got it. I've got it. I'm stepping off. What's the last thing when you, well, what's the last thing that you remember when you get off that plane? What was the last thing you did? Well, the last thing that you did was you got on the plane. And before that, you went through security, and before that you went to the ticket office, and before that you paid for the ticket, and before that you got the money, and before that, you understand? Now, what's the purpose of doing that? Well, if you keep stepping back often enough, you will end up with what you did right now. So, you got the ticket. I'm going to do the bum's rush on this, okay? Not do everything, tiny little thing. You got the ticket. You saved the money. You got the money from the bank. You put $5 a week in every time into that special account, and when you did $5 a week, you did that for so many weeks, and then that was the start of your savings. What was the next thing? Well, the $5 a week was too hard, so the time before that, what you did before that was you took a job mowing lawns, or you did some extra time stacking shelves at the supermarket, and that brought you in $10 a week. So you were able to save $10 a week, and eventually you will arrive back at the very first thing that you needed to do to realize your dream of stepping off that plane to begin 3 years in your idea of paradise. That's the thing. And what was that thing that you had to do? It could be something as simple as writing a list of things which you needed to do, which maybe you were putting in a yard sale to give you a start. It will come down to something as small as a doable thing. That's the point. The thing about having a big goal is you have to find something which is a valid start to the whole thing. And once you have found that valid start, then you will be able to achieve your dream. What was the thing that they used to say? This is when it was almost impossible to go to China. They say, how do you get to China? Well, how do you walk to China? One step at a time. You put one foot in front of the other. And one way or another, except for the floaty bits, where your hat floats, you get to China. You have to find a way to make that first moment, that first action, doable. And it may be as simple as putting $5 into a special account. That's the trick. That's the thing that you need to do. You need to take the mystery out of the finances which are scaring you so much. I gave a good example of helping someone to overcome their fears of driving. They'd failed their test, I think, 3 times, and he had almost given up on taking the test. So I said, I think I might be able to help you. And I asked him, what do you fear? What do you think is just not doable about this? And he said, there are a couple of things. He said, I used to fail because I was scared of doing the emergency stop, because everything stopped, just all stalled. And he said, and the other thing was reversing around a corner. These are things that are peculiar perhaps to the British driving test. So I said, let's go out in the car. And we went out to a place where there was no one around, that they were knocking all of the houses down, but the streets were still there. So everything was there, the road and everything. I said, now, I want you to reverse around the corner. He said, I can't do it. I said, why? He said, I'll just bump up against the curb. The tyres will just go on against the curb. I can't do it. I said, okay, right. What I want you to do this time is I want you to reverse around the corner, and I want you to bump up onto the curb. He said, oh, that won't be easy. And so that's what he did. And he did that a few times until I said, now, do you think you could do that without bumping against the curb? And he said, I can try. And he did it. And he passed his test. So, you have a clear idea of what you need to do. And every day you do something toward that dream, on that plan, on that target, every day, something. And then you will realize your dream, because it cannot be otherwise. It just can't be otherwise. It will happen. It has to happen. Every day you have a clear idea of what your dream is, and every day you do one thing, or two, or three, but a minimum of one thing which will take you to your dream. John, I hope that helps. It's not as hard as you think, you know. You can do that. This is a foreigner in the Philippines. Bye for now. It's gone on a bit, I know, but I do.